on any platform, you can actually take that and put into the software for analysis. So there's been an argument of social media as a media monitoring tool and a way to gauge public opinion before it kind of takes off. So a lot of the tools have positioned themselves as being able to draw upon social media data to be able to pick up on weak signals on social media using some of these analytic tools. So the idea is from this perspective within the media monitoring specifically, that you'll be able to detect weak signals before it kind of emerges into a massive story. And a lot of these tools allow you to do this type of automated monitoring, kind of monitor search queries and websites in terms of doing the analysis. So network analysis is one really popular method in social science research to complement interview data, survey-based data as well. So it gives us a quick situational awareness of key influential users who might be talking and sharing information about a topic. And we can use it to analyze social media data to pinpoint key influential users, find out key groups that form around those topics, and also to highlight popular information sources as well. So who's linking to who, what are the core messages, and who are those core influencers? It kind of gives us that information. Interestingly, watching some TV shows in the last few weeks, there's a lot of popular culture mentions of network analysis. So Homeland TV show, season 7, episode 6, they actually do an interesting network analysis of social media data within the program, where they're trying to detect where disinformation is being spread on social media from automated accounts. So they get the data and they do a network analysis on screen, and they're able to highlight the bad actors in red here as automated accounts, bots that are spreading disinformation and harmful information on social media. With the tools like NodeXL that I'll show you, you can do similar types of analysis, so we can spot who's spreading information and whether they're a bad actor kind of for malicious purposes. So similar with the conspiracy theories as well. Network analysis is also interestingly being used a lot in intelligence, counterintelligence, and law enforcement. So there's some videos on YouTube for its use by the FBI, for example, in catching criminals and kind of mapping out gangs. It's another popular culture mentioned, season 3, episode 7 of The Wire. They do a phone network analysis, trying to pinpoint which which particular phone user is getting the most inbound calls, and that person is the most kind of important in the network, could be the ringleader, for example. So there's a lot of interesting popular culture mentions out there. So NodeXL was created to allow social scientists with the ability to access social media data for advanced analysis without having to learn how to program or kind of code in R or Python. So they created it in a very familiar package within Microsoft Excel. So you just install this plugin and you get a new feature within the application of Excel called NodeXL Pro. And it'll give us easy access to network data streams. It'll give us things like text analysis, sentiment analysis, and we can generate really powerful reports using the application. So this is just an example. If someone's downloaded the tool in Excel, you'll have a new window appear called import, and that will actually allow you to access different social media APIs to actually get data. So it has a functionality for X, formerly Twitter. You can also access YouTube-based data as well. So we've done some really cool analysis on YouTube comment network data as well. So every YouTube video has a wide range of comments, so we can actually analyze and visualize that using network analysis. Even if we haven't got access to those APIs, if we've got data from other platforms, we can also bring that data into NodeXL as well. So this is a summary visual of all the different things you can do in NodeXL. And there are some benefits over this software over something like Gephi, which is open source, in that all of this is automated analysis. So the human input is very little. We will download a set of option files, put those into NodeXL in Microsoft Excel, and it will go away and do some network analysis for us. So network metrics, cluster analysis, vertex metrics. It will do some content analysis, so text analysis, sentiment analysis. So is the social media post, is it positive, negative, or neutral? It will also go away and do content analysis for us, time series analysis. And at the end, it produces those visualizations on the right-hand side. So that's an example of a network visual that it produces. And alongside that visual, we have a whole range of interesting data and insights that we can use to kind of populate our report. So this is an example of a very simple network analyzed in NodeXL called the alphabet network. So what happens in NodeXL is if we enter vertices, so we can show the relationship between two entities in NodeXL. So to create this simple network visual, all we did was we entered which person connects to another person. So each person is represented by a letter. So for example, A, and we can say within the data set that A connects to B, so they have a relationship with each other. And we keep doing this with all the different letters. And then some of those letters have higher connections with other people, and they will have a higher betweenness centrality score. And we can use that analysis as kind of intelligence. So the software allows us to import manually the data. We can type it in, but also we can go to those social media APIs and bring in that data as well. So even in other domains, HR analytics, people analytics, there is a growing use of network analysis to actually speak to different people and generate these in-person networks. But again, you can also go onto social media platforms and rapidly get this data and analyze it. So you can also weight the nodes using different metrics as well. So this is an example if we were looking at influences by betweenness centrality, which users are kind of connecting to other users. But within the software, we can also weight the size of the nodes, the users by degree centrality as well. So within NodeXL, there's a lot of ways of measuring centrality in terms of who's the most important person in a given network. So there's lots of different types of analysis. This shows it in another way. So the difference between the betweenness centrality and the degree centrality. So with betweenness centrality, it's looking at users in a strategic location in the network that are able to bring in other people that aren't actually connected to the core of the network. So if you remove the circled user here, you actually lose access to those two other nodes on the right-hand side. Similarly, for degree centrality, it's another metric, but it looks at slightly different things. It's looking at the number of connections you have directly, and the higher the connections you have, the higher degree centrality. So in this example here, the betweenness centrality, F, L, really influential. If you remove F, for example, you remove access to A, and then all those other connections as well. So C, D, E, and B will go if we remove A from the network. So these are some representations of degree and betweenness, and this is all calculated, produced in NodeXL. So you can enter the data and kind of get some insights and analysis from there. A few years back, we did a literature review. We were really interested to find out how people are using NodeXL and in which context. And we were really surprised to see that not only had it been used within the area of social media research, which we expected, we also found that it's been used quite a lot in analyzing Blackboard discussion boards, personal email networks, internal security, political sponsorship, even campus-based social media platforms as well as Wikipedia. So even though the APIs give you access to a certain subset of data from platforms it has access to, people had figured out how to kind of set up their data, manually put that into NodeXL. So even if they had their own campus social media platforms, you can actually visualize and analyze those networks in NodeXL. So I think last time I checked, they had thousands of citations, so it might be touching 10,000. If you search for NodeXL and the topic that you're interested in, often it will actually show you a list of relevant papers as well if you wanted to read up on those. In terms of how we've been using NodeXL in our kind of projects, our research, so we've had an interest in looking at social network analysis from a kind of health and well-being perspective outside of COVID. So we've been looking at the marketing of certain hashtags in terms of health. So we looked at the hashtag neurodiversity for well-being, and we published a paper in the Journal of Consumer Marketing. But we've also published in pure health-based journals as well, looking at the growth of certain hashtag communities. We've looked at how medical professionals are using social media as well, using network analysis and getting that data. Within COVID-19, we found there's a lot of disinformation and misinformation being shared. And using tools like NodeXL, we were able to get a quick situational awareness of what was happening. We also used it to sample how particular stakeholders were responding during the pandemic. So, for example, in the UK, we were able to find out how nurses were responding in the pandemic, what were their concerns and views, and we can get that data and rapidly analyze it as well. We are also able to look into an area of sport research as well, specifically thinking about influencers and how brands connect to each other and doing some types of exploratory research. So you can really cover a lot of grounds. There's a lot of potential topics out there in terms of hashtags and information. So we also did area of research more broadly defined as kind of digital transformation, where we looked at TV shows like Netflix, Squid Game. We analyzed how Pakistani politicians were sharing information during elections in Pakistan a few years back with a kind of developing world context and comparing that to other case studies. And we've also done some analysis on general news diffusion as well, all again using NodeXL. In our work, we often refer to this visualization, kind of a guide to interpret our network shapes and visualization. So the Pew Internet Research Center, alongside the Social Media Research Foundation, a few years back now, analyzed thousands of online network shapes, and they were able to find certain patterns that emerge in online networks. And they were able to use that to come up with some guidance on how we should interpret those networks. So within NodeXL, within social network analysis, one particular shape that often emerges is known as a polarized crowd. So there's a simple representation on the top left-hand side, the kind of red circle and the blue circle. And within that, you've got kind of subclusters. And then at the bottom, you've got an actual network example. So these clusters typically emerge if you think about elections where people are quite emotive towards one political party compared to the other. You'll get a clear two big network shapes and very few interactions between them, kind of isolated clusters speaking by themselves. In NodeXL, what that would look like is two huge groups, a lot of densely connected individuals, and some few smaller groups. Polarization, we also found a lot in online conspiracy theories as well. We've also got unified tight crowds. So there's a simple example on the top right-hand side with the green overlapping circles, and then an actual NodeXL example as well. Academic conferences typically have a really tight crowd, small events where a lot of people might already know each other. So it might be kind of journalistic events, conferences, in-person networks, some small hashtags. And we'll say that they have a tight crowd. They're kind of unified, really tightly connected. We also have some other network shapes, brand clusters, which is represented also in the NodeXL graph towards the bottom. So those are just individual users who actually tweet or post, but they don't mention, retweet, or reply to each other. So we label them as brand clusters. We also have community clusters as well, where there's smaller communities forming alongside a large isolate cluster. So I mentioned earlier, social media is full of these polarized crowds. So I would say the most common patterns that I see is groups that are polarized, two kind of networks forming. And then the second most frequently observed network pattern would be the broadcast network shape. So that broadcast network shape is simply when you have users within those groups who are being retweeted with high frequency and are they kind of being engaged with as well. So we have an inward kind of facing network shape here, which is a broadcast network. There's also this support network that looks similar to the broadcast, but it's when one user actually replies in high frequency to another user. So the support accounts of organizations, so let's say a bank or a customer service account, will be replying to other people in high frequency. But in our line of work, the topics, the analysis we do, we've been finding that polarized and broadcast network shapes are two really common observations that we make. So in a lot of topics, people are having their own conversations in separate groups, and then there's also this huge idea of people kind of amplifying content in the broadcast network shape. So we've done a lot of research in terms of looking at influencers, and one area that we were interested in a few years back was to find out in when the English Premier League tweets, what happens to their tweets, who's actually retweeting them, who's responding to them, who's actually signposting content to the English Premier League. So we published a paper where we were able to kind of get an insight into those key influencers. So I'll just bring in this paper. So our goal was to find out who the key people were within that network. So within the paper, we spoke about all those different types of networks, so the broadcast network, brand clusters. We did a longitudinal analysis over a course of several months to find out who the opinion leaders were and how the conversation changed over time using network analysis. So rather than just look at 1 month, we looked at several months, we sampled data and said, okay, Premier League has a mostly broadcast network shape and structure. It tweets and then the accounts around it are retweeting. But we also were able to gain an insight into other accounts that might mention or tag the Premier League. And we found that, not surprisingly, some of the accounts like Manchester United, who are in the league, Liverpool, Arsenal, they're actually tagging and sharing content and amplifying the brand of the Premier League. But there were some surprising insights. So famous players at the time connected to the league in 2016, like Wayne Rooney, EA Sports, the FIFA, the game, the PFA Players Football Association, they actually came up as influential users within the network. And we can also pinpoint any particular individuals who might not be expected to be found in the data, but are also kind of extremely influential. We were also able to describe some of those accounts as well. We spoke about the importance of betweenness centrality, and we had some management kind of implications as well in terms of social media presence, crafting the message and interventions as well. So there's a lot of interesting insights we can get from those. In one paper published last year, May of last year, we were trying to find out some of the similarities and differences between COVID conspiracy theories that were being shared. So we found there was a huge amount of disinformation out there across social media, and we managed to trace down 4 key conspiracies that we found were just kind of taken off on social media platforms, particularly Twitter as it was known at the time. So there was one conspiracy theory called Film Your Hospital, which was encouraging people to go to their local hospitals and film to show that they were empty. So there were some nurses, some doctors who were on their lunch break, and there was people asking them, "What are you doing? Shouldn't the hospitals be overrun?" So there's some crazy disinformation going around and some kind of unpleasant activities happening all around the world. And there was a huge online discussion happening at the same time. Polarized groups really into this conspiracy and kind of retweeting and sharing it. In addition to that, there was some other conspiracies. So hashtag expose Bill Gates. People were arguing that Bill Gates, it was kind of orchestrated COVID. He was kind of microchipping people, and there was people actually believing this, kind of sharing this on social media. So we were seeing all of this content. So you've got people kind of filming hospitals. You've got people kind of speaking about microchips, Bill Gates. Then we've got 5G, COVID-19, kind of UK centric people believing that the 5G network somehow is kind of weakening people's immune systems. People are going out kind of vandalizing phone towers. In the UK, I spoke on the radio as well that someone was jailed for vandalizing a phone tower in Newcastle. And they actually pointed towards social media as influencing their kind of views and opinions. So they read the content and actually took action. Then there was also this viral pandemic video that was spread on social media. Someone had kind of spent a lot of money in creating this viral video spread on Facebook and all sorts of other platforms, which had vaccine kind of mistruths and all this agenda built into it. So by doing a network analysis of all four of those networks, we were able to make some conclusions, and we published a paper last year on kind of developing techniques to kind of counteract these kind of disinformation networks. So we developed a framework, and we found that a lot of almost all of these conspiracies were pointing to low-level quality news. So network analysis gave us the list of URLs. None of them had any credible or scientific backing between them. We also found that most of these networks were amplification networks, so over 50% of them are all retweets and very few original kind of tweets and posts coming out of those as well. So we're finding that there's a lot of amplification, low-level news built into those clusters as well are quite densely populated, and some of them are kind of echo chambers as well, just kind of speaking and conversing about themselves. So in that paper, it was a good example of how you can do a four-way comparison between different conspiracy theories and the kind of different insights we can get from those as well. So you can do some really interesting comparisons. I also mentioned that you can do a type of analysis using YouTube in terms of YouTube comments-based data as well. So this is an example of a video where during the pandemic, there was a kind of drop in the stock market. And there's a lot of people started posting videos on YouTube recommending shares, stocks to buy because of the kind of downturn in prices at the time. So using NodeXL, we can actually take a video. So in this instance, this person recommended some videos, some shares to buy in his video. We can take the video and download all the comments into NodeXL and do a network analysis, which tells us the key people in that particular discussion in the comments, what clusters formed, what were the key topics, what were they talking about, and who were the kind of sub-influencers across those networks. So in each of these clusters, we have annotation in terms of group one, group two. So they're weighted in size. So who are the people speaking to each other? And then it weights those in size alongside keywords for who those users are. So group one, it says stocks, buying, think. So that was a very general group thinking about what shares people might buy. But we were able to find out the key discussions people were having. So people were speaking about buying shares in companies. So BP and oil came up. Group of people kind of speaking about that. So we can get situational awareness also of the YouTube-based data as well. What topics people might be speaking about and kind of interesting information from this as well. So you can also analyze and visualize YouTube networks as well to quickly get that data. In another paper, we were interested in analyzing the role of social media virality in promoting kind of popular culture topics. So we were interested in analyzing a simple 24-hour time period window when people were speaking about Netflix Squid Game. So we were really surprised to find out that in just less than a day, 24-hour window, people had managed to watch the entire Netflix show, so they binge watched the entire series and had all these discussions on social media about the plot, about what happened in each episode, forming those communities and actually actively discussing those plots. So in a very short amount of time, they'd watch the series and they became kind of advocates for the show, and that information was being amplified even further. And we can use network analysis to get an awareness of who those users are, what communities are forming, and what kinds of topics they're conversing about. So we were able to pinpoint the smaller clusters, the communities that were forming. And we found that a lot of them weren't affiliated with Netflix at all. They were just individual users towards the center of those groups, and they formed several communities to discuss the show. So towards the center, you might have a film critic, a general fan, and he's tweeting, he or she's kind of tweeting about network analysis, talking about Squid Game, and the network analysis shows us what they were kind of speaking and talking about. So we actually traced down 13 key groups who were really active and promoted as a Squid Game. And we were able to also within the paper classify the types of accounts they were. So individual fans were one category, but we also found film and TV critics as another category. The official Netflix accounts ranked really low within the top 10. Towards the bottom, there were a couple of Netflix associated accounts, but a lot of these was user-generated, self-driven accounts. So in this particular software, NodeXL, we can extract groups, we can zoom in onto groups, and kind of get additional insights into all of that information. I've been speaking a lot about just general network analysis in terms of getting data from social media, doing a simple network analysis and showing those visuals. In another paper published a few years ago, we did some unique exploratory analysis. So my colleague, he's based in Poland, and in Poland at the time, they had this concept of mandatory vaccination. So it was being discussed on social media. The government was thinking to bring in mandatory vaccination. So my colleague was really interested in analyzing the network using Gephi to map out and visualize whether people were pro vaccination mandate or kind of against that. So the dark green in this visualization represented vaccination mandate advocates. So that's people who really wanted vaccine mandate to become kind of law within the country. And then in the dark pink, kind of reddish color, were the vaccination mandate opponents, so arguing against having vaccines as being mandated. And the numbers represent the rank influencer they were. So the top rank influencer number one was within the vaccination mandate opponent category. So we've got this situational awareness. So this is an example of a very polarized discussion. On the right-hand side, you've got one group, and then on the left-hand side in green, you've got another. In addition to this network visualization and analysis, what they were able to do in this analysis is take real data from the ground. So data from local health authorities, actual empirical data that had been collected on things like number of COVID cases, number of deaths, positive tests, quarantine, and taking the network metrics, they were able to find correlations between what's actually happening on social media in terms of number of replies in those groups and the number of users within those groups. So for example, in G1, if there was an increase in retweets, so G1 is kind of advocating for vaccine mandates. If there were more deaths happening on the ground, this would lead to people within social media to take action. So they were actually retweeting and posting much more. So there was a pattern between what was happening on the ground and how social media users were actually advocating. So you can actually do really interesting correlations if you have other data alongside your social media network-based data. You can actually find interesting patterns between what might be happening on the ground and kind of correlating that with social media networks as well. So that was a really interesting piece of research. So there's a link in there as well if anyone's interested in viewing that. There are a couple of books out there as well for looking at network analysis as well. So just general introductions to network analysis. I normally recommend these two texts for kind of general background into understanding the concept of network analysis and theory. One other thing I wanted to flag also is that there is another aspect to NodeXL known as NodeXL Pro Insights Power BI. So a few years back, they've added a new component to the application where we can do a more advanced analysis. So I'll just see if I can load that up. So what they've done now is taking the outputs that NodeXL gives us, we're able to view insights and reports in something known as Power BI, which is an online way to view and explore our kind of insights and networks. So Power BI can kind of publish to the web. And some of the additional things we can do now, if we export our NodeXL data into this Microsoft Power BI analysis, is to look at the locations of people as well as the groups that they're in. So on the left-hand side, there's something called groups, G2, G3. Lay those on the world map. So now we can actually see whether there's any geographical relationship between those users, whether people are forming those groups all around the world. So you can see here. So if you look in the UK, we've got, so this is data from this hashtag SMMW24, which is a popular social media conference. And we can see discussions across the UK taking place across Europe as well. So we can zoom in, we can hover over them, see the types of keywords, words that they're tweeting about. So I think the most activity, I think potentially might be a US-based conference. We can see content kind of being posted all around the US, and we can zoom in and we can see if there are any regional differences in terms of how people might be forming clusters. So there are some patterns, so some of the colors representing those groups might only be found in certain places. And we can hover over that and see some of the keywords people are using within those networks, within that particular data. Within the analysis, we can also now view the top tweets people might be sending as well. So we've got this table that kind of gives us information on the top retweets, top replies, and so forth. So there's a lot of information being provided. So this was another new feature that they've added. So we can actually export some of our data into this new format. One thing that is accessible to everyone is the NodeXL graph gallery. So you may have already had a chance to view this, but anyone can access this NodeXL graph gallery.org. And this actually allows you to search and view different network analysis that's actually been created. So they've got topics on all sorts of interesting cases around kind of health, around COVID. And what we can do is we can actually load those up and actually see those network visuals. You can switch to Interactive Explorer. You can zoom into those networks. You can download the data as well and produce kind of interesting insights. So you've got interactive ability to zoom in and out of those networks. And there's a lot of data on this particular topic. You've also got data on vaccinations. You've got people analyzing brands, popular kind of trending topics, government related data as well. So this is one example of the hashtag teacher Twitter. So how are teachers connecting with each other on social media? What networks they form? What are the kind of groups and clusters looking like? So we can do some interesting visualizations of that data. With the Interactive Explorer option, so if you do browse the website, you can click on View Interactive Version of this graph. It actually allows you to zoom into those networks as well. So you can see here, they're often quite really densely populated, quite huge in size. And we might want to zoom in and see what's actually happening in a kind of granular level. So we can actually zoom into those nodes and we can see what the person might be kind of tweeting or posting about. And again, we can use that information for kind of insight and getting interesting information from it. So we can actually export the data in there. So again, this is a nice way just to learn a little bit more about the insights it gives you. So it gives us the kind of top 10 influencers. It ranks them by between essentiality. It gives us the top URLs, top websites people might use related to this topic. So the actual application in Microsoft Excel actually looks like this. So I had it open earlier. I was doing some analysis. So you've got NodeXL Pro ribbon here and importing data, fairly straightforward. So import, we can click on, say, from Twitter. We can enter our keyword or topics that we're interested in. We can select the time period, limit, say, the number of tweets, and then it'll actually bring that data into the software and it'll actually give us the raw tweets here. So you can actually see the raw data appear in Microsoft Excel. And then we will import some setting files, which I've downloaded earlier, Twitter, Power BI, network data. I just click on automate, and then it will actually do automatic analysis for me. And it'll give me some outputs of the data as well. So this is a small subset of data on generative AI, and it's put labels on each of those groups. So this is one group of users speaking about Gen AI. So there's some different influences in there. Within the desktop version, I can just click on the node and it'll give us information on the different kind of tweets being sent here as well. We can import, we can export that data. I think one of the nice things with tools like NodeXL, the academic tools, as opposed to the industry tools, is that we've actually got access to the raw data and a wide range of metadata as well. Some of the industry tools, they might mask that data, not allow you to export all of it or to kind of interrogate or interpret it. So here, the amount of metadata we've got is quite a lot. So we've got the raw tweet, but we've also got the kind of hashtags is used in those tweets, the domains in tweets, mentions in tweets, what source, what language, for example, what platform it was kind of tweeted from, the date, the time period, all sorts of relevant information. And again, on the individual users as well, we've got a wide range of information. So location, self-defined location also is in there, and a description of the account, which we can use to kind of automatically analyze, and a host of other information as well. So alongside each of these visualizations with these networks, there's a wide range of kind of associated data coming from them as well. So in addition to that, those textbooks I recommended as potential readings, there is also some more text out there that they might have already seen, but if not, the Pew Research Center report that I mentioned earlier, that's worth checking out as well. So they talk about those different network shapes on social media analysis, kind of quantifying those and how you can understand those types of research shapes as well. And we're also always running different events as well. So the Social Media Research Foundation, we run a summer school 5-day intense event. There's smaller 1-day training sessions as well, teaching you how you can use this software in your own research as well for kind of dissertation-based research. A lot of people kind of use the analysis and kind of get some interesting insights from there. But the foundation is running short courses, long courses as well, if anyone's interested in those. I think that was everything from kind of my side. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wasim. That was very insightful. We learned a great deal about social network analysis, especially using NodeXL and its different functionalities. So I can say with a great deal of certainty, looking at tools for over quite a few years, since the establishment of the Smart Lab, NodeXL is an ideal tool for that. So I don't know of any other tool that can do this in such a way. Yes, I would say that the visualizations that NodeXL produces could be better, but as a tool in terms of the metrics that you can get, it's very powerful. So, and of course, there's this built-in user friendliness that it's built into Excel. So that's wonderful. It's an add-on. All right, so the floor is open for questions. Any questions from our wonderful grad students here in the program?
I was wondering if there's any like insights into TikTok specifically using this kind of method approach.
Yeah, it's a good question. So currently, TikTok doesn't provide an API directly for academics or other industry professionals to access the data. But what we've been able to do is if we have scraped or received TikTok data ourselves from other platforms or from other ways, we can import that into the software. So all NodeXL or any network-based tool needs is the username. So which user mentioned the other user alongside potentially the text. So as long as we can get that data in some form, even if we had to scrape it, use a third party, we would potentially be able to get that into NodeXL and analyze TikTok. At the moment, we've done some research on TikTok, but not in the network format. We can get data, we can scrape it, but if we wanted to, we can put that into NodeXL as well. I believe in the next few months or over the next few years, they will start to use web scraping integrators more directly into the platform. So in the future, you might easily be able to get data from TikTok and other platforms because they'll build a web scraping feature within the software itself, and it might allow you to get that data.
Very good. That was a great question. I actually had a question which is related to that, so I'll just go ahead. Are we still able to get data from X using NodeXL?
Yeah, it's good question. So it was a scary moment. So when Elon Musk took over, we were really worried what would happen to the API. So most academics predicted that he would shut down the API and commercialize the data. So he actually did that. So within a few months, had access to up to 10 million tweets previously, free of charge if you're an academic. And I think now it's like you have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars just for a really small data set, which was not good. But luckily, NodeXL has found a way around it. It's not as fast as before. It takes a while, so it might take you several hours to get the same data set. But using a form of kind of web scraping intelligent way to get the data, it can still get the data from X, but it might take a little bit longer to actually obtain that data.
And are all these data access slash scraping or, via the API mostly, available via the NodeXL Pro account subscription?
Yep. So actually it does it in a clever way. So what it does with the X data, so it's available in NodeXL Pro. So it asks you to log into Twitter, and then it uses your own Twitter account to kind of view content, and then it'll use that viewing to bring in data into the application. So that's all available in NodeXL Pro. So it'll let you get the X data.
Right. Appreciate it. Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? I guess, yes, Eva, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Doctor. And it's quite an inspiring talk, and I'm particularly inspired by the paper on Squid Game because I study popular culture. I think that's really important because nowadays many hit shows are not only investing in the content creation, they also do a lot of things that are like marketing on social media platforms. And yeah, so, but what I'm wondering how about its consistency, because some key accounts might be influential when promoting this show, but are they like influential in promoting other shows? Is like something really reliable or like replicable in this sense? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. So our focus in that paper, we did a two-way comparison. So we were interested in looking at when you have a high TV show like Squid Game compared to a low impact show. So on the same day that Squid Game launched, another TV show launched at the same time that didn't have the same impact. So Squid Game, interestingly, there was not much marketing kind of money spent into it, and they never realized how big it could become. But fans kind of drove that content. So within that paper, we did a comparison. So we wanted to find out what are the characteristics of Squid Game, what propelled it compared to this other TV show. And we also spoke about how the topics formed. And we were also interested from a more general point of view, what do people actually speak about tweets within the data themselves. And we had a list of themes and sub-themes for plot discussions. I think we spoke about how some of those insights could be used mainly from a marketing perspective in terms of content marketing. So what content were audiences engaging with and being hooked with, and potentially using that to inform the content marketing strategies for the other shows or shows going forward. And also whether there was anything unique or special for the Squid Game TV show that helped kind of propel it further. And what we found was the individual fans, but also TV critics and those blogger accounts with huge followings, they got on the back of the show, they posted about it, tweeted about it. So we had some recommendations and some observations based on that.
Thank you. Emmanuel, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Wasim, for a very insightful presentation. The section on the longitudinal study for the English Premier League was extremely insightful. A little observation that I have is that most of the literature that I've read ever since taking the course, quite majority of them are focused on cross-sectional studies with very few longitudinal studies, and you gave a typical example in your presentation. Are there any challenges in terms of undertaking longitudinal studies within the social media context?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. So I think one potential reason with network analysis and tools like NodeXL, if you gather data all in one go, so if you try to analyze more than say 40 or 40,000 tweets, it wouldn't be able to analyze that in the network itself. So typically around 20,000 tweets in one network visualization and graph is normally the capacity for interpretation. Because if you have too much data shown within the network visual, it doesn't make sense. So one could be the technical limitations, but also is the time limitation as well. So with the longitudinal analysis, it requires a bit more thought around the kind of keywords and the time factor as well. So each kind of month or each time period, you have extra databases, extra information, and sometimes with the academic papers, you can only fit so much in those manuscripts. So there's potentially more of a focus on those individual data sets, individual topics. We also found it challenging. So we generated maybe 12 network visuals. We looked at a long time period. We had all this data, but within the manuscript, we could only show so much. So there's also an issue of how to be selective. So we actually summarized. We did a long analysis. I think we only had like four visuals, and we kind of explained those core aspects. So it's probably the time factor and sometimes the technical limitations of some of these tools. So you have to kind of put additional effort and resources for the longitudinal analysis.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right. If we don't have any more questions, I guess we'll wrap it up. Thank you again, Dr. Wasim, for that insightful presentation. We really, I'm quite confident that we benefited from your insights, and it was a great learning opportunity because this was ideally placed, and I'm so glad that you were available at a short notice. So thank you again. So we will wrap up our presentation for today. and hopefully we'll be in touch in future as well for possible research collaborations. You also have Dr. Wasim's contact. You're welcome to get in touch, if I may say that. All right, well, have a wonderful evening, Dr. Wasim, at your end, and good afternoon, everyone. Take care.
Great. Thanks for the invitation, and nice to see you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you,
bye.
Dr. Wasim. Yeah.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Dr. Khan.